What if the products in your home and even the food on your plate was quietly sabotaging your health in ways you didn't even imagine? Welcome to the Green Living Now podcast, where we cut through the noise and help you live cleaner, healthier, and more consciously without the overwhelm. I'm Amy Tedisco, Green Living mentor, organic farmer, speaker, and holistic health advocate, with over 30 years of experience helping people detox their lives one step at a time. Each week, I bring you powerful conversations, surprising truths, and actionable tips to help you ditch the toxins, embrace sustainable living, and feel your best naturally. What would make a successful real estate investor walk away from it all and raise chickens and grow her own food and build a backyard homestead? In this episode of the Green Living Now podcast, I'm joined by Marjorie Wildcraft, author, founder of the Grow Network, and one of the most respected voices in modern self-sufficiency. We're diving into the personal crisis that sparked Marjorie's radical lifestyle change, how backyard food production can transform your health, your mindset, and your future, and practical tips for beginners no matter how much space you have or what kind of shape you're in, and why now is the time to take control of your food and your freedom. Whether you're homestead curious or ready to dig in, this conversation will inspire, educate, and challenge you to see your backyard and your choices in a totally different light. Let's get started. Marjorie Wildcraft, welcome to the Green Living Now podcast.
Oh, well, Amy, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so excited about this upcoming conversation because we have so much in common, so many simpaticos, I guess you could say. So I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So I teach people how to grow food in their backyard, even if they have no experience, they're older, they're out of shape, and I have an emphasis on like a grid down kind of a crisis scenario, like how do you do it when it really counts? But
Oh,
I
so
was
you're
not,
saying the electrical grid down, just so that people catch that,
or almost any kind of
or
crisis
any kind of grid.
situation,
Okay,
yeah, the grocery stores are shut or whatever, and you need to grow food, right?
gotcha.
I'm not like, didn't grow up in a hippie commune, or I'm not a farmer's daughter, nothing like that. Actually, my dad was an artist and my mother a photographer. I mean, there's nothing about growing
Ooh.
food in this. And we were a little bit poor. I would say being poor in America is nothing like being poor anywhere else in the world. So I'm not
Mm.
complaining. And I grew up in South Florida, which is a pretty lovely
Oh,
place to
wow.
be poor in. But like a lot of kids that grow up in families like that, I was very interested in money and wealth for a lot of
Mm.
the first part of my life. I got a degree in electrical engineering and I'd always wanted to travel overseas. So I went to Hong Kong. I managed to score this really great position managing these cellular telephone networks. And the guys that worked for me, Hong Kong Chinese are like all about money.
Oh,
So it's like
really?
kind of at home. And they said, "Hey, Marjorie, you got to take this class with this guy named Robert." And I'm like, okay. So I go, and this guy, Robert, just blew my mind. It ultimately inspired me enough to leave engineering, move to Austin, Texas, and create a real estate investment business, which I was so thrilled with. I had made
Wow.
my first million before I was 40.
Oh my
And
gosh, congratulations. That's
I
amazing.
I know, right? I was living the dream, and
Yeah.
the business was so successful that Robert asked me if I would be on his infomercials. And so for 4 years, I was on national television with Robert Kiyosaki
Oh, that
selling
Robert.
selling Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, all my
Oh
friends were
my
going,
word.
"Did I just see you on the?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you did." Yes. So
Wow.
that was kind of fun. That was the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so nothing about growing food anywhere in here, right? And a friend of mine, Steve Bridges, was the president, and he was a neighbor of the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. And he had this dream about getting locally grown food, organic food into the school system. And
Oh, nice.
I said, Steve, let me help. The volunteer work is definitely something I value and try to do as much as possible. And I had no idea that this project was going to completely, absolutely, and devastatingly, you could say, destroy my life. I mean, it
Ooh.
was kind of like the Mack truck or the stage 4
Oh my
diagnosis or
goodness.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it was pretty innocent. And what it came down to was we realized that there were not enough local organic farmers to provide even part of the vegetables for one small rural elementary school. And this is outside of Austin,
Oh.
Texas, which is,
So because there were in Texas, there were so few.
there's so few everywhere. It's not
Right.
just
But
Texas, right?
not
Now,
just
now
Texas.
Vermont, where you're at, is one of the few places you can really be a locavore and enjoy yourself.
Yes.
But for most of the United States, and there may be a few communities up in Oregon,
Yeah.
you
Food deserts.
I'll never forget the meeting when we all realized this. And I'd organized the space at the Red Rock Community Center, and there was like no farmers. And I started violently shaking because I knew there was only 4 days worth of food supply in the grocery stores. I knew that food traveled an average of 1,500 miles. And I knew that I was surrounded by 20 million Texans who were armed to the teeth.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly. And I had two small kids. And I just kept shaking because I could see that there could be a huge problem at some point in
So you were
time.
looking at a potential scenario where some kind of calamity happens and there's no food left in the store and there's not enough farms
Right.
providing it, so you can't go to a farm.
So I ended up selling the whole real estate business, and we bought we fell in love with a 75-acre tract of land out in the county over, which turned out to be nothing but sand. And I mean,
Oh,
I learned how to grow in really, really hardship conditions, but
it sounds like Findhorn,
I think kind of, yeah.
right?
And all my family and friends were like, "You're nuts,
What
or
happened to you? Why did you
yeah,
give
yeah."
up this amazing
Yeah.
job?
She was like, "Marjorie, this is the United States of America. We're never going to have empty shelves or supply chain problems here. This is Texas, you know."
Oh boy.
Uh-huh. I said, "Look, I've I've gotten this download. I've seen what I've seen and I know what I know, and
Yeah.
I cannot in yeah, there's millions of people who know how to make money in real estate, and make money,
Yes.
period. There's almost nobody that knows how to grow food anymore.
Hmm.
And I, we all want the download from God or universe or whatever you want to call it. And then when you get the
Sure.
message, you're like, could you give that to somebody else, please?
Exactly. Can I
I
put
don't,
you on hold?
I'm not suited for that particular job, like I
Right.
don't, but it turns out, the universe knows what it's doing. We should not mess with it. Yeah. So I just, yeah, I took a lot of flack from friends and
And what
family.
year
And
was this?
this was like 2003.
Oh my. So we're talking like 22 years ago.
Yeah. And so I just went on a binge to like learn everything I possibly, all the permaculture courses and the gardening courses and the livestock and the forestry and the orchards and the,
Wow.
food forests and everything I could, and hanging out
Yeah.
with barefoot crazies in the national forest. I mean, you name it. And I began to teach. And then people kept saying, hey, no, you got to make a video out of this. And so in 2009, we made a video called Backyard Food Production. you know,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, for 2009, it went viral. I mean, like
That's amazing.
500,000 copies. Like now that we didn't sell them, they were stolen. Back then they used to have those torrent sites, but I mean, to
Oh,
have that's the definition of viral even now, but back then that was astonishing.
unheard of.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, once you learn, you start. Actually, I fell in love with growing food, and I thought, well, make this video. We've got the website. We'll just go
Yeah.
away. It'll sell itself. And
Right.
that did not happen.
Oh,
And
gosh. Even
little,
with all those copies that went out. So people were clearly interested in the information, but not necessarily buying it.
yeah, well, we were in full prepper mode, and I made sure there was no way to identify me in the video, which is a huge marketing mistake. And but
Oh,
anyway, so that's actually the point in time when I realized in retrospect, I realized I became a digital marketer. Now I'm going to tell you, my first degree is engineering, and then there's marketing. There's good and there's evil,
sure.
right? I mean, but I've had to learn a lot about marketing. Anyway, and as soon as you learn something like, oh, here's gardening, that's great. And you want to learn chickens and rabbits and then home medicine and then treating infections without antibiotics and then
Right.
preserving food. And, it goes on and on and
Oh,
on. And
sure.
started bringing on a lot of other homesteaders who were super knowledgeable and creating courses. And we ended up building a whole academy with pretty much everything you need to know in order to live self-sufficiently. And
Yes.
yeah, it's been a business since then, and I do a
Wow.
lot of education and podcasts like this, and
Yeah.
just really encouraging people to grow their own food. And
Mm.
and it's just such a I know you know, it's just such a wonderful activity. So that's how I got into it. So if you're
Yeah.
watching this podcast and you're like, I don't know anything, I've been there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so interesting that you feature or you focus on older folks. That tell me a little bit about
Well,
why you
yeah,
chose that population.
yeah. Well, I didn't actually choose that
Oh,
population.
it
So,
chose you.
what you're referring to is I have a webinar at backyardfoodproduction.com.
Yes.
Duh. What a great name, right?
Yeah, that's
It's so
perfect.
simple. There's nothing complicated about
No
it.
misinterpretation there.
And it's how to grow lots of food in a backyard, even in a grid down situation, even if
Right.
you have no experience, you're older or you're out of shape.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily target that audience, but
Oh,
if
okay.
they're, I'm a little bit older and my people that follow me do tend to be women that are a little bit older.
Oh, okay.
But, I think most of America, 60% of America now has a chronic disease.
Oh, at least it may be
Yeah,
higher.
it
And
may be.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean the statistics about the health of Americans is so shocking, especially when you look at the $4.1 trillion we're spending on health, so-called health care. I think people are definitely waking up to the idea that, or at least some people are waking up to the idea that what you eat actually makes a difference and what you're exposed to in your home, has some impact. I mean, there's so many people that are chemically sensitive. And then I think there's so many people that have symptoms of chemical sensitivity and they don't even know that it's related to what they're eating and exposing themselves to. Would you agree?
exactly. Yeah, so many people in the Grow Network, like I had Crohn's disease or I had, this
Yes.
and then I kept asking my doctor, is that related to what I eat? No, 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 no. You just take these pills, and then they're like, wait a minute, but that's part of my alimentary canal. I mean, it should have something. And they finally get rid of the doctors,
Yes.
clean up their diet,
Yes.
and then whoa, it heals. Imagine that.
Right. And I've talked with so many different people over the years, but particularly in the last 5 months of doing this podcast, that had these health reactions, went to the Western medicine doctors. They have maybe 4 hours of training in nutrition.
Exactly. If
And
that,
the
yeah.
doctors, of course, first thing they do is prescribe some kind of medication. And then that can cause side effects, or they'll send the person to the specialist that deals with one symptom instead of looking at the whole person. Like I keep mentioning this one woman, Katie, who when she was 24, she was living in an apartment rental that had really bad mold. And that was the
Oh,
last straw for her that caused her to have so many different health problems. She couldn't keep a meal down without vomiting. She had hives, she had itchy skin, brain fog. I mean, all these different things. And it took her getting away from the Western medicine. Not that there is not a purpose for Western medicine. I think, crisis care, it's can be fantastic. But
diagnostics. They're really good at
exactly,
diagnostics
diagnostics.
and parts. Like, I've sliced my leg open. It was
Oof.
great. They cleaned it out and sewed it up. I'm like, you
Yes,
guys
yes,
did good
yes.
there.
Right.
But the rest
But
of
not
it,
for keeping well per se.
right. Yeah, not the
Yeah.
rest of it. So I,
I,
I agree with you. I don't, throw the whole thing out, but you have to be so careful with that system.
exactly.
You really do.
Now, I read something on your website that I hadn't really heard much about, and I'm really curious. You mentioned something about minor cuts will kill at some point,
Yeah.
and surgery will become too risky. Will you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. So, yeah, so treating infections without antibiotics. And so that was one of the things. So, again, like I spend time out in the national forest with barefoot crazies, and this one guy spends a lot of time out in the wilderness or in Mexico with the curanderas, the native indigenous
Oh, wow.
healers. And he taught me how to treat like sprains or breaks or wounds or lacerations naturally. And these
Mm,
are techniques that actually have been used for thousands of years. So if you
right.
think about it, the Greek and Roman guys bash each other up with swords.
Yeah,
Well, some of them died of their wounds, of course,
sure.
right? But the vast majority of them lived and they all loved their scars, right?
Yeah,
Poulticing, it's a very, very simple technique, and the plant materials are almost everywhere. And certainly you
right.
should be growing a patch of it.
Yes,
But those things are available. And the World Health Organization has said, yes, this is not fear porn or conspiracy or any of
right.
these. Like they have flat out stated that because of antibiotic resistance, and
Right.
this is already happening, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people right now die every year because they have no more antibiotics that can deal with it. And they
Right, because
throw
it's been
all,
so overused, right, in
absolutely. Yeah.
animal production that the bacteria are resistant to these.
Yeah, well, that's how
Right.
MRSA came around, wasn't it? It was a development out of penicillin. So
And in a hospital, wasn't it?
I'm not certain about that part,
Yeah,
but yeah. But fortunately, these techniques that are ancient
yes,
still are extremely effective.
right.
And you can do this. Your great grandmothers did this. Your great great
Yeah,
grandmothers and the healers back thousands of years ago used
sure.
this. So these techniques are accessible to anybody today. Yeah, and it's that kind of knowledge is what Grow Network is all about. Part of that is making sure that your body is healthy and you're eating
Yes,
good food. So
yes.
I have a herbalist friend of mine. I used to run a shop in Austin, Texas. He's a lovely herbalist, and this guy comes in and he's kind of heavy, but average American, and he says, "I got diabetes. What have you got that can help me?" And he says, "Oh, can you throw this away for me as a McDonald's bag, right, with some garbage in it?" She says, "Get
Mm.
out. Just get out of my shop.
Oh,
I can't, I have
you can't
nothing.
help him.
I have nothing for you. You,
Oh,
you know, like, and she's right.
right. Unless he was willing to hear that that kind of so-called food, I don't even think we can call it food, is a big part of his problem,
Exactly. Yeah,
right?
there's a lot of people who have healed diabetes just by changing their diet.
Absolutely.
Interestingly, I found that people heal diabetes from everything from a vegan diet to a carnivore diet. I think the
Isn't
main
that
thing
so
is
interesting?
you just get off the commercial food supply, I think is the main thing, right?
Yeah,
So,
I find that whole individualism part of eating so fascinating because it would be so easy if there was a one size fits all, but that's not how we're designed as humans, right? Our physiology is different. Our genetic history of what our ancestors ate is different. Parts of the world that those ancestors lived in, all of those things seem to have an influence on us and what is best for us. I mean, I tried to be a vegetarian years ago, and I did it for about a year, and I didn't have the energy. I'm normally a very energetic person and really clear mind. And
yeah.
especially when I was pregnant with my daughter, I craved a steak. And so I realized, and also I remember bacon. I could not handle the smell of bacon because I wanted it so much. And so I just shifted the kinds of meat that I ate to like grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Luckily, we're pretty fortunate here in Vermont that there are people that are growing grass-fed, grass-finished beef here, so I don't have to have it trucked from some other place in the country. One thing I wanted to just touch on, when you said the plants and stuff, the first thing that came into my mind was plantain for cleaning out wounds. Was that one of them?
Plantain's a wonderful poulticing material.
Yeah.
I haven't lived in an area where there's an abundance of plantain.
Oh,
Like, for
because we have
example,
it here in our lawns.
yeah, the beautiful big fat leaved ones.
Yes.
Where I was in Texas, it was like this narrow leaf variety. You'd be out there for hours to get enough.
Oh, wow.
So
Conditioners
many
are good.
plants you can use. Comfrey is another
Oh,
great one
yeah.
that's
I've
like
got
a
that in my
weed.
garden, in fact.
Yeah. I love prickly pear, and prickly pear will grow everywhere from Mexico to
Oh, so
um,
that's a drier
Alaska.
conditioned plant, probably.
Yeah, but it seems to do well even here in the tropics. So
Oh, no
it's a
kidding.
great plant. The main thing is you normally with poulticing, there's two things about poulticing you're going to want to know. And one is you need a lot of material. So for example, if
Oh,
I had something that was about the size of a quarter, an injury here on my hand, I'd
yes.
want to have like that whole hand in a bag of
Oh, so you
plant
wouldn't just
material.
do one little spot. You would put your
No,
whole hand into
yeah, people
the
always say,
poultice.
"Oh, I did a little thing and it didn't work." And I'm like, "Yeah, you did a little thing." The other
Oh,
thing is
interesting.
you need to keep it on a pretty long time.
Yes.
So I got bit by a copperhead snake when I lived in Texas, and that's a
Yikes.
potentially fatal bite, but we treated it at home and we got on it right away, and we
Yeah.
had
And what,
the
how did you treat
materials
it?
with a prickly pear.
Prickly
Um,
pear. And
yeah.
so that, like plantain, draws out stuff from the
hmm
body.
Yeah, so we had my husband actually did this. I made the video about it. It was great because
Yeah.
when I was
Oh, you
in
mean
it,
the actual video of how you treated your own snake bite?
well, I had made a video on how to use these techniques to treat wounds and snake
Oh,
bites
okay.
and all kinds of stuff. And my husband and My daughter actually knew some to some extent. She was like 13 or 14, and she knew, she has, because she's my daughter, right? And she had some of these skills, but my husband didn't know anything, but I had made a video about it. And when I was out, and all of our stuff happens on the living room rug, and I couldn't speak because
Ooh,
the venom was in me, right? And I was
yeah.
having an experience, and he would look over me sometimes, and I could look in his eyes. He and I did have a good level of trust, and he knew if I felt I couldn't handle it, I would signal him that we need to go to the hospital. But
Yes.
even in the intensity of this, I knew I was going to be okay.
Oh
But I
my
heard the
gosh.
video going in the background because
So your daughter was playing it?
yeah, my husband and my daughter
Or
were
your
studying
husband and
it.
your
Yeah,
daughter were playing. They knew it. They knew that you had that and that they could get the information from it, huh?
yeah. So
Oh my
it was
word.
before the venom kicked in too badly. I was like,
Yeah.
follow these directions because a bite like it's
You don't have
hugely
a lot of
significant.
time, right?
The pain kicks in right away, and then it comes like everything in waves, and it builds and builds and builds. But
Oof.
you have a little bit of time to basically. I was like, hey, hun, I'd been out doing chores all day in Texas. I was
Yes.
stinky and sweaty, and I normally the first thing you should do is lay down, but I was like,
Right. You don't want to keep moving to keep your blood flowing so much.
right. I'm like,
Right.
I'm not going into this experience stinky. I'm going to take a quick shower.
Oh my gosh, even after the bite?
Yeah, so I take a shower and then lay down because, I knew what I was in for, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, I'm on the ground. Like I said, I parts of it I could not even talk because, you got this venom going
So
all
how
through
long
your.
did it take you to get it out of your system?
I'm not sure the venom's gone, honestly.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
really?
And my brother who loves snakes says it's a hemotoxin, which is a blood toxin. And he says the next time it'll be worse if you have
Ooh.
another one. Whereas there are other venoms that are nerve toxins, and those you can build resistance to, like the rattlesnakes and things.
Oh my goodness, but not the
So
hemotoxins.
not the hemotoxin. So anyway,
Ooh.
so he got a whole bunch of prickly pear, and I told him about the rocks there's a simple way to clean the prickles off.
Hmm.
And he said he took like two pads that were, good, maybe 12 inches in diameter and about an inch thick. And
Yeah.
basically we put them in a blender, and he made this big slurry that we put in one of those plastic grocery bags, and then wrapped that around my whole foot because I was bitten on the top of the foot. And so
Okay.
basically that whole foot was encased in
Oh,
prickly
so you
pear
put your
material.
foot inside the bag with the slurry.
Yeah, and then tape
Oh,
it up
wow.
at the
And so
top.
did
Yeah.
you leave it on like 24 hours or?
The first time was a good 8 or 10 hours, and
Okay.
so we're going through all this, and
So
then
you were at a crisis after that.
right, and at some point,
Okay.
I mean, there was some vomiting and some other stuff going on. This is a
Yeah.
serious toxin
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
body, right? And then after most of it settled down, I'm still not. I mean, I'm able to talk a little bit more, but then he puts me in bed and with the foot elevated a bit. Yeah, and we keep that on there for 8 or 10 hours. In the
Yeah.
morning, we took it off. Actually, Dave opened it up and he goes, this smells pretty good. Anyway, then you let the foot kind of air out and dry out and clean off for half an hour and then poultice it again. So we did that basically for the first, oh, 36 hours. We basically always had it encased. And then over the next couple of days, I would just have it on at night. And I was
Hmm.
up and walking around within, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. So
Wow.
it's unbelievably effective. It's just really, really effective. And no antibiotics,
Right.
no hospital drama, no having to
Right.
get
This,
relatives to
wow.
organize because the kids, because mom's in the hot, like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? It was all just done at home. And, yeah, somebody else had to cover my chores, but that's pretty minor compared to
Well,
what
they
was
would have
going
had to
on.
do that even if you were in the
I
hospital,
know,
right?
right? Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, these techniques and, growing your food, the crisis we're headed into.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we're already in it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, we're already like ankle deep in it, right?
Okay.
Let's see, we're recording this now as of May 30th.
Yes.
The last ships that were tariff free were like a month back, right? So
Okay.
the inventory we have now is the less expensive inventory. Anything coming in here in the next couple of weeks is going to
Yes.
be at least 30% higher, right? Because there's a 30%
Now,
additional
I
tariff.
thought he actually postponed them again. Is that
I don't,
Not true.
maybe, I know it went to 145% for a
Yeah, it was out.
while. That would have shut this country down within about
Totally.
2 months. I mean,
Yeah.
everything, Amazon, Walmart, all of them would have gone bankrupt.
Right. I
Like,
mean, when you think of how many products this country gets from China alone,
yeah, yeah. So
Walmart would probably
145
be out
would
of
have,
business.
yeah, oh, they would have. Yeah, all of them.
Right.
80% of their inventory is from China. So
Right.
no business can withstand that. So then it
Right.
was, they went to different numbers, and the
Right.
last one I knew of was 30% for 90 days, and then we
Oh,
don't know
okay.
what's going to happen.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
has it
I don't
changed again? I
keep
don't
up with it
know.
very.
But
But to your
we,
point, so
yeah,
even if this 30% is the number at the moment, the cost of things coming from other countries is going to be recognized by consumers, right? Because products are going to go up in price in the stores. Um,
yes,
and
and
so,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
And because of the disruption, there's going to be a period when there's very little inventory. Now,
Right.
another thing, and there's some of us that are speculating that this whole tariff scheme was actually brought forward to obfuscate that global food production is way down.
Oh, really?
The 8 major grains that this planet eats, and grains by far is the largest food source for humanity. So
Right.
wheat, corn, rye, sorghum,
So,
the big ones, right?
yep.
All of them are across the board down. And we've never had a situation like this. So there have been years when the US, corn production was down, but then Brazil
Right.
would be up. I mean, we could always
Okay.
kind of make things work, right?
Yeah.
Now they're every single one of them everywhere. And part of it has been doing that massive amount of flooding that's been
Mm.
going on the
So all the
planet, or
weather conditions.
yeah, and then we've got drought in other places. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the Ukraine has been blown up and there's no
Spread
farming.
back.
And then we've had legislation issues. So there's been all kinds of crazy legislation going on in the EU, shutting farmers down. We're having the same thing here in the
Yeah.
United States. Oregon, I think they've just sent out, or is it Washington, has just gotten 30,000 farmers and communities into a lawsuit to prove their water rights,
Oh my
which is
gosh.
going to cause huge disruption in crop production there. The fires in Los Angeles, there was those huge lithium ion battery factories that blew. They spread toxic waste all over the Central Valley. I don't think
Oh my
anybody should eat
goodness.
anything out of that. We still have
Right.
this stuff going on from Palestine, Ohio, nobody's talking about.
Right. That
It's-
train derailment. Yep.
I mean, and then, what, regardless of this tariff thing, whatever it is now, the way they're jerking it around, we're
Right.
going to see inflation in a big way this summer.
Yeah.
Layoffs, I think people are just, it's completely insane to me when people say, oh, well, they're shutting this down because it's going to bring jobs to America. And I'm like, I just saw a robot riding a bicycle. Do you mean to tell me we're going to
Seriously?
have, yes, do you mean to tell me we're going to actually have human jobs in manufacturing if we do bring it back to
Oh
America?
gosh, no.
By
I
the
can't
end of this
imagine.
year, you'll be able to buy a humanoid robot for less than $8,000. And I'm like,
I've
I'm
heard
gonna,
actually that Tesla's making them, and the one place where I think it actually could be a really useful thing. I mean, there's probably other places, but thinking about elderly folks that live by themselves, rather than having to go into an assisted living or a nursing home, if they had one of those robots that could cook and clean and manage their medication and all that, that'd be kind of cool. If
oh
they
my
were
gosh.
affordable and
Yeah.
reliable, which I
If
would
I had
imagine they would
had
be.
one when we were raising the kids to wash the dishes, oh my
Right?
God, what a
Oh my
relief that
God, to
would have
clean
been.
the house. Yeah, there's so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
different tasks
I
that I
want
can
one,
imagine.
like, heck
Yeah,
yeah, I
right?
want
Who
one. Like, who
doesn't?
wants to wash the bathroom? You take
Right.
care of that, Robbie
Totally.
the robot, whatever. But
Yes.
I was at the Miami International Airport. They already have robot wheelchairs. I mean, there's so many
Wow.
jobs. So the job slaughter is going
Yeah,
on right now. And it's not just the physical, I'm pushing a wheelchair,
right.
coding with AI. I mean, I'm an early adopter of AI.
I know,
Was
I love AI.
fascinated. Yeah.
ChatGPT is one of my best friends.
My own editor, we had to cut back just because sales are dropping dramatically, but I don't need an editor. I mean, there's all kinds of
Yeah,
jobs that are just
yeah,
disappearing. So we've got this huge unemployment thing, we've got
yeah.
prices increasing, we've got
So much uncertainty.
there's so much uncertainty with the global food supply is not there. The
Right,
commercial food supply is toxic anyway. We used to say you
totally.
could be a perimeter shopper. That's not true
Right, right.
anymore. Right. So it really is time. And here is the saving grace is that with just your hands and a backyard size space,
Yes,
you can produce a lot of your own food and your
right.
health will improve dramatically. Your
Absolutely.
sanity will improve
Yeah,
dramatically.
yeah,
You know, you'll be able to handle this transition. And I say that is really the saving grace in this whole thing because you do not need a governmental, military, industrial think tank complex to feed you and take care
that's
of
right.
medicine. You can do it
And
yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are totally aligned on this. I think that, having the skills to grow your own food it's a sovereignty thing. It's a sense of empowerment that you have control over something in your life. I mean, food we can't really live without after a certain period of time. We have to
Yeah,
eat something,
right.
right? And because the conventional food supply has so many different toxins in it, I mean, one of the things that I like to focus on is even people that don't have land can grow some things on a sunny windowsill or, on a patio or even these little home hydroponic systems. I actually have one because I do farm tours on our organic farm in the summer season, and I give people the tour of the big organic farm. And then we come up to the house, and I have house gardens because I love growing my
Yeah.
own stuff, even beyond what my husband and I are growing down at the big farm. And then we have my husband Dave actually started a hydroponic, half-acre hydroponic greenhouse at the back end of our farm. Started it with two partners. He has since sold his shares, but we still, lease the land. And so I take folks to see that huge operation, which is mind-boggling. And then I have a little, tower garden that I use in
Yes.
our house here in Vermont in the wintertime to grow cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, and lettuce. So there's lots of different options, and I even teach, I have an online course where I teach people how to do that.
You're right on. We're right on the same page there because I
Yeah,
deal with a lot of people who are in apartments or condos. And I want to
exactly.
point out to you that are watching this, and if you're going, oh, I couldn't do that, or no,
Yeah.
no, no, I want to warn you that you have been programmed not to grow food. And
Ooh,
there's a lot of program. We have all been programmed, right? We've watched
yes.
television, we've read
Yes,
stories, we've gotten
sure.
this stuff through the indoctrination camps known as public education. And a lot of us are becoming very aware of the massive amount of misdirection and sometimes outright
Hmm.
lies,
Hmm.
which is wonderful. I mean, it's part of what the apocalypse is all about, is the lifting of the veil and the telling of the truth. If you think about it, and I can prove it to you very easily that you've been
Okay.
programmed, you think about every movie you've ever watched where there was a farmer in there and they
Hmm.
were portrayed as an idiot. Like Green Acres, right?
Oh boy.
Right? Or anybody in a movie that's working in the fields or
Except for
something.
the Waltons.
Oh yeah, the Waltons.
Love the Waltons. I
The
started
Waltons
watching
did
those
good, or
again.
Little House on the Prairie, or
Yeah.
sometimes. But the vast majority of things, and if they show people working out in the fields, it's usually
Yeah.
because they're an indigent worker that can't do
Right.
anything else and they're
Right.
desperate, right?
Yes.
Or if somebody has a garden, it's some doddering old senior that's already got Alzheimer's. You know what I mean? They just
That's
don't
an interesting
portray it.
point.
They
Yeah.
don't want you to grow food because
Right.
they want you dependent on the
Well,
systems and they have the control of the media and the music and Hollywood and the whole thing.
and the
Yeah.
fact that Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos have bought up so much good prime farmland kind of has to make you wonder, what are they doing with that? And I've heard in different communities in different states that they actually ban backyard gardens or backyard chickens. And like you were talking about, I think it might be Oregon that you were talking about as far as the water issue. And of course, if you don't have water, it's really hard to grow food unless you're collecting rainwater. The whole
Florida.
pollinator decline, right? I've been hearing from beekeepers and others that something like 70% decline of pollinators, which for those that don't know why that's horrible beyond the fact that it's a loss of species, they pollinate our food, right? We can't have
Yeah.
zucchini and tomatoes and strawberries and all kinds of different foods that we need pollinators to spread the pollen back and forth to create those fruits and vegetables.
I got to tell you, one of the freaky
Sure.
things about living on this island is the lack of, I mean, there's some insects, but it's nowhere near. I grew up in South Florida, and I mean, we
Oh,
used to have insects, right? You know, like
yeah.
mosquitoes and flies and God knows
Yeah,
what.
and
I
they
mean,
don't in
and
Puerto Rico.
they have some, but it's nowhere near what I would have thought. So I
That's
don't.
such an interesting thing because I've noticed a decline in insects too. I mean, I grew up in New York City of all places, and just outside of the city in different suburbs or Long Island, I remember as a kid, so many more bugs.
Yeah.
than what I see currently. I mean, we still have a lot of wildlife and insects and birds and things here in Vermont. I feel like we're somewhat unique in that respect, but I have heard about other places, even in the US, that hardly have any songbirds or, nobody gets the lightning bugs like we do, those cool bugs that glow
Yeah.
at night.
Yeah. We have a lot of problems. I mean,
Yes,
there's
we
no
do,
doubt.
but there's
But
solutions.
I believe that we do have solutions to all of them.
Yes,
And one thing is growing your own food. And I've had people
right,
say, well, if they're going to spray it, I'm like, they're spraying everything. But the
right.
food that you grow in your backyard is going to be way more nutritionally dense,
Absolutely.
way more
Fresher.
fresh,
Yes,
way more vibrant, and you will
yes,
become healthy eating from that.
correct.
And we do have other solutions. I'm working with some other groups on how we can mitigate the damage done by chemtrails and things.
Oh, really?
We'll do another conversation about that, but
Yes.
there are techniques for remediation, and it's
Oh,
still
wow.
fairly experimental, but you got to know how to grow food. I mean,
Yes.
we're at that stage.
So top three things that you could recommend the audience start with.
Well, that webinar at the backyardfoodproduction.com.
Okay, we'll have that link in the show notes.
Great. It's 45 minutes because I shortened it up because nobody has time anymore.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
goes really, really fast. So
Okay.
I've spent the last 20 years or so teaching people how to grow food. And there's thousands of ways to get calories and nutrition. And I
Yeah.
have cherry picked the three fastest and easiest ways for people to produce food, and especially people that know nothing, they're older, they're out of
Yeah.
shape, which
Yep.
means if you're younger and in shape, you've got a big advantage. I recommend these systems because this is a simple, I've spent 20 years teaching people and that whole engineering background and business background.
Right.
I've like
So I'm
really
sure you
been
have
able
it
to,
very methodically outlined.
exactly. Yes, step by step,
Yes.
you know, and I'll give you the overview. And
Okay.
one is a small flock of backyard laying hens. So 6 laying hens, an average laying hen will produce about 250 eggs a year.
Oh, wow.
They take a little time off. I know, it's amazing how productive they are. They take
That's
some time
incredible.
off in the cold
Right, because
winter.
especially in colder climates like ours, they stop producing eggs. I think it has to do more with the sunlight than it has to do with even the cold, right?
And actually, as far up as you are, ducks might be a better
Oh,
choice. But let's stick with the chickens because everybody
okay.
knows chickens.
Right.
And ducks actually produce more, although they eat more.
And
So
higher
two,
fat eggs too, isn't it? For
yeah.
ducks. Yeah.
So 250 eggs per bird, and if you have 6 of them, that's 1,500 eggs. So that's 3 egg omelets for you every day of the year, plus 33
Wow.
dozen eggs to trade or give away. So
Yeah.
you can build a chicken coop in a run. I show you the diagram and I get you plans for that in the
Cool.
in the webinar. You can do that over a weekend, a couple weekends. If you're not handy, do some barter trade or pay
Yeah.
somebody. If you have a lot of money, there's this beautiful kits. Like, oh my God, I could move into some of those. But
Yep.
anyway, you can set this up in like a week or two. Go out onto Craigslist, buy some 6-month-old laying hens. They start laying at 6 months.
Are they still available? Because I was hearing that there was a shortage of laying hen chicks.
There's a shortage of the chicks, but
Yeah.
I've actually
But you
checked
can get
quite a
the older ones.
yeah, and you don't want to raise them from chicks anyway. So I
Right.
did
You'd
it.
rather have them, what, 6 months and
Yeah,
older.
already laying. Yeah.
6 months to a year is probably the ideal, right?
That's you're right on with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get them, you move them in, make sure you've got
Yes.
your water and feed set up. And it takes them a couple of days and then bam, you've got breakfast. I mean, like in a couple of weeks, you can be having breakfast handled.
There is nothing like fresh eggs from your own chickens. We have had chickens before. We have so many predators, we can't keep them alive. I wonder if it would be different with ducks,
Well, you're gonna need to build a really good solid coop
like
and
a
run.
fort.
And yeah, like a fort. And that's part
Yeah.
of the reason I have the design there
Yeah,
in
I'm
the
gonna check it out for sure.
in the webinar, and then we'll put you on an email sequence with a whole bunch of other
Oh,
resources. And
cool.
one of the other resources is ultimately you're going to want to feed your chickens yourself, right? So right now
Yes.
in the beginning, phase one, you're building the coop, you're getting the chickens, you're starting to
Yes.
adjust your lifestyle. Phase two is figuring out how to get the feed for the chickens. And
Hmm.
one of the things I'll send you is a video that my friend Justin Rhodes put together on how to feed your chickens for free.
Right.
So,
And
uh,
not feed them GMO grains and glyphosate
exactly,
sprayed stuff.
exactly. Because,
Yeah.
you got to think about the inputs for your chickens, but let's do this step by step.
Right.
Phase one is get the chickens, get
Yes.
used to that. So that's the first component.
Okay.
And if you do the math, it ends up being about 94,000 calories. And people normally go, calorie. But I'm going to tell you, the calorie is going to be a unit of currency here very, very soon. So you want calories, and high quality nutrient dense calories are way, way different than your
Yes.
Cheetos or Doritos. So
Or
this,
McDonald's or whatever. Yeah.
whatever, this is really high quality food. So the
Yes.
first thing I recommend is the 6 laying hens. And again, this is in that webinar at Backyard
Right.
Food Production, and I show you this. You'll get it. You'll be able to figure that it's laid out for you step by step. The second thing is a garden.
Okay.
And I really recommend raised bed gardens and
Yes.
cinder blocks, 2 cinder blocks high,
Oh.
250 square foot beds that are like 10 feet by 5 feet. And I like the 2 cinder blocks high because then you can sit on the cinder block and reach
Ah,
in. And so people who have a bad back or bad
yeah.
knees, you can just sit there and be able to garden this way. And then this intensive planting means you're going to have less weeds. It's just a much better system of gardening. And honestly, for a couple of years, I was living in Colorado, which has a teeny tiny growing, maybe like Vermont, teeny tiny
Perhaps.
growing season.
Yeah.
And in that 100 square feet, I had the 2 beds. I grew all the produce that I needed. I ended up giving away a bunch. I dried, freezed. I mean, I had produce
Mm.
for a year from that garden. So you can grow a tremendous amount. And
Yes.
as your skills and systems and your soils develop, you can do way more, right? So I'm assuming a beginner. So a
Yes.
garden, and gardens are very, very timing specific. So, like right now, well, in Vermont, it might be time to do the garden, although you would have probably wanted to have gotten your starts going a while
Yeah,
back.
I mean, we did start even my home garden I put in about at least a week ago.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and the usual I can't even speak. The usual rule of thumb has been to plant around Memorial Day.
Hmm.
But I usually try to cheat the system and then, if I have to put some row covers with hoops and stuff to keep
Yeah.
things warmer, because we do get colder nights, especially this year. But yeah, it's okay. So
Yeah.
so
But the chickens you can do anytime, and then
exactly.
but work on the gardens, get the gardens going, and then
Yes.
the third thing I recommend is a home rabbitry.
Oh,
By the way, the chicken coop and run can fit in a parking spot. The 100 square foot of garden space can fit in a parking spot, even with the pads and
wow.
stuff. And then a home rabbitry with 1 buck and 3 breeding does, you're going to get somewhere between 75 and 85 rabbits. A rabbit is completely equivalent to a chicken. All your chicken
Nutritionally.
recipes, yeah, and all your chicken recipes are going to be, you can just substitute rabbit.
Wow. They're so cute though. I would have such
I know.
a
That's
hard
why I
time
do
with
do
that.
that last. Do the gardens and the chickens first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But they breed like rabbits.
Yes. Well, you know what? We have a whole bunch of them running around the farm this year, which is very scary because, we'd see one or two randomly, but now there's a population that is, we used to have neighbors on either side that raised rabbits, but they didn't contain them. So they've just kind of gotten loose in our valley, which is so not helpful, but
Well, you got a meat source right there. So
I
yeah, just start
guess
trapping them.
if you
Yeah.
can catch them. But aren't they hard to trap?
Well, there's some snares and traps that you can easily get to. Yeah, that's a whole meat source in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But rabbit, when you think about it, people say, well, why aren't we raising chickens for meat? And why do you choose rabbits? And there's a very clear distinction, is because chickens are omnivores. And to feed chickens, they're going to be using foods that would compete with human use. So a lot of times we feed
Oh,
chickens the grains or
yeah,
vegetables or stuff like that, right? Which is
right.
stuff that would be best used for humans. Whereas rabbits eat forbs and grasses and bark and berries and stuff that you can't,
Huh.
I mean, you think about it, you've got that wild population of rabbits going on out there. So it's really easy to come up with the food source for the rabbits.
Yeah.
So I do recommend, there are systems we call colony rabbits where you do kind of have them in a semi-contained, semi-wild
Yep.
area. But I would really recommend everybody in the beginning to start with them in cages
Right.
or tractors, because you need, for your own sanity, you need to be able to control things. And you,
Yes.
you need to know when breeding is happening and who's bred
Right.
who and the schedules. And then again, as you get more experienced and you understand stuff, yes, you can change your systems up. But for an absolute beginner,
Right.
That is the way to go, is to start
Yeah.
putting them in cages. And again, I'm not a big fan of buying rabbit pellets, but do that in the beginning
Yeah.
because you've got so much else to figure out. And again, I'll show you in the webinar what it looks like. And there's resources for managing, the breeding and all that. We also will send you information on alternate feed stocks for rabbits, what plants are good for them that are
Oh,
edible and how
cool.
much protein do they have. So
Yeah.
that's in the email follow-up sequence.
Wow.
But the last big time we had a big production of rabbits was in the 1970s, which was in a totally insane decade. Like, I don't
Hmm.
know if you remember stagflation.
Well, I remember pollution
Mo-
washing up in the oceans was one thing. I remember seeing like plastic tampon applicators and thinking,
oh,
how the heck did this get into the ocean?
yeah. There
Yeah.
people were waiting around the block for 5 gallons of gas because of the OPEC
Oh,
thing
right.
going on. There was that shooting at the Olympic. I mean, it was bad. There was
Yeah. Tough time.
stagflation. Interest rates to buy a mortgage for a house were at like 18
Mhm.
or 20%, which is insane.
Oof.
I mean, it was very, very scary that
Yeah.
decade. And there was a huge back to the land movement,
Yep.
and
Yep.
lots of people realized the value of raising rabbits for meat in the backyard. And the
Yeah.
real benefit of that is the most nutritionally dense food that you will produce in your backyard is going to be the livers and the organs from the rabbits or the
Oh,
occasional
interesting.
chicken that you process. I know when I was growing up, eating liver was a thing. You did it on Fridays, your mother made you eat
Right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't love the taste of it unless it's sauteed
No,
with onions and butter.
yeah, lots of
And even
butter, lots
then,
of
the
garlic. Yes,
texture's
I
a little funky.
totally get it. But you
But
dice up a little
nutrition
bit,
wise,
put it in a hamburger.
it's
There's
true.
lots of ways to make it happen, but it is
Yeah.
so nutritionally dense that you.
Actually, the one thing I did like is pate, liver pate. So there are
Yeah,
ways to make it so that it can be very palate
delicious.
pleasing.
The average American does not eat anything except for like the white chicken breast. There's If you
I
want to
don't
be
even
healthy,
like the white meat. I like dark meat better.
you got to eat the whole animal, which is
Yeah,
involving the organs,
right.
and that's historically and traditionally, like Sally Fallon with her traditional
Oh,
cooking.
yes.
That's what
I
it's
have
all
that cookbook,
about. The bone
Nourishing
broths
Traditions.
and throwing those eggshells in the bone broth and, using all these parts because you're trying to get as much mineral density back into
Yeah,
your body as possible. And that's,
right.
anyway, the first step really is backyard food production and that three simple system. I do go through the calories and show people also what it's going to look like on a day to day. Really,
Like an amazing resource. I am so
yeah.
excited to share this with folks.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've been dialing this in for like 20 years, so I
Wow.
finally got it like we can get you up to speed very, very quickly.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, Marjorie, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think I should?
Well, I would like to end on this. So when I
Okay.
got into this, I didn't know anything. I was completely freaked out. I mean, I
Okay.
was literally just shaking, having panic attacks and night sweats and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Growing my own food has healed me on every level you can
Wow.
imagine. It's healthier than actually just eating the nutritious food, but being
Mm,
outside and
yeah.
sunlight. But on the physical level, I used to have severe allergies. Those are long, long gone.
Oh,
On
wow.
the emotional level, I am not concerned about grocery stores closing. I know that I will be stepping up to help people in my community start
Right.
figuring this out. Emotionally, I'm very prepared and calm. It's going to be way worse than I think, but I'm still I feel good. Mentally, people who eat higher quality clean food are more intelligent. They score higher on intelligence tests.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's just basic.
Well, that kind of makes sense. If you're feeding a body what it needs, you can operate at an optimal level on
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
systems, right?
Yeah. And then you're working with forces of creation with your
Yes.
hands.
Grounding with the earth's energy.
And I'm going to tell you that magic happens. It's just incredible the things that happen when you start
Yeah.
working that directly with
Yeah.
creation. So
I agree.
every level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs will be fulfilled. And so for me, I am so grateful for that
Yeah.
night in Red Rock when this whole thing happened. It was a horrible time at the moment, and
Right. But
I
boy,
will.
what it delivered for you.
Oh my God. I totally began to understand what wealth really was about. I had used
True
to think
wealth,
it was money.
right?
Yes, true
Yeah.
wealth. And it's been such a journey and it's been so healing.
We don't need to have crisis in order to know how to grow food and to benefit from that on so many different levels that you've talked about. I mean, there's even science to show that breathing some of the microorganisms in a healthy soil actually triggers the serotonin in the brain.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Wow. That is super neat. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been fascinating. So we'll put the say the
But
website.
yeah, backyardfoodproduction.com. And
Okay,
it's a 45-minute
backyardfoodproduction.com. We'll
webinar
put
there.
that in the show notes, and the Grow Network will put that website there as well. So if anybody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Really, to do the backyardfoodproduction.com, go do
Okay,
that and we'll put you in an email sequence and get you all those resources. And
perfect.
yeah, I'm pretty available, so
Awesome.
would love to hear from you. And I love it. I do a lot of different public events, or I used to anyway. And people show me the gun on their phone. You see my chickens? You see my? I got
Oh,
rabbits because of you. And
oh, that's
I'm
so
like, oh, that's so
cool.
great. Yeah, it's so wonderful.
It's nice to be able to inspire people like that and to hear about it, right? It's like I'm sure you've impacted thousands of people over the years and to actually get the feedback. I mean, I feel that way myself when I hear somebody tell me something that they really enjoyed, that I've shared. I think, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to know that," because otherwise you think you're just putting stuff out there and not really sure how it's landing. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
I
people
totally
love
agree.
feedback.
Well,
Well,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much for getting a chance to talk to all your friends. And
Absolutely.
I love what you're doing, and that organic gardening class you have looks fabulous. So,
Oh,
and I
thank
love that
you.
you're bringing awareness about the sheer amount of toxicity is insane. And yeah, so anyway, thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate
Well,
you.
thank you, Margie. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Green Living Now podcast. If you are feeling inspired to take steps towards a cleaner, healthier, more sustainable lifestyle, don't miss my free guide, 5 Steps to Ditch Everyday Toxins Without Overwhelm. Inside, you'll get simple, practical swaps to clean up your food, home, and habits without falling down a research rabbit hole or second guessing every label. Just head over to greenlivingnow.com or click on the link in the show notes. And if this episode gave you a new insight or fresh perspective, please hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to detox their life and feel better naturally. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and stay green.